the heck's going on?
Give me 1 second, Mr. Nowicki. I'm on the phone with admissions real quick.
Okay. Let me pause things.
Search bar, so I had to figure, ask them why it wasn't.
Okay. Well, no, it's okay. All right. I hope it works out. You're the only one here again, so let me, we'll just kind of talk it through and see how things are going. Let's go through the schedule just to take a look at it.
Okay.
So do you see the schedule?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're is October 6th. So we're starting chapter 8, and we're going to take 2 weeks on this because the most important health conditions are cardiovascular conditions. And so this week we're introducing cardiovascular system, and we're talking a little bit about hypertension. And then next week I'll talk about heart disease and stroke.
So our test is next week on Tuesday?
Next week, Friday it'll open, and it'll be 3 chapters, chapter 11, 13, and 8.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got kind of 2 weeks for this, or most of 2 weeks for chapter 8. And that's because there's these really important health problems. For most Americans, we're going to die of either heart disease or stroke or something like that. That's the most, but that'll happen later. Even for me, that's later. And for you, it's much later. But if you know now, then you can do things so that it remains much later.
Yeah.
So it's helpful to understand it for you because it's most likely stuff your parents and grandparents are going through. And so it can be helpful to kind of understand what's going on there. So let's switch looking at the PowerPoint, which I think is over here. And I'm going to move around here. Do you see the functions page?
Yeah.
Okay. So the cardiovascular system is the heart, which pumps blood, and then the vessels, which hold blood. And this is moving blood throughout your body from your lungs to your muscles and other organs. And so this is, you have this continual circulation that's going, take it to the lungs, and then in the next second it goes to an organ. And probably the most important thing this does is transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, so your brain and your heart muscle need a steady supply of oxygen. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
If you cut that off for a minute, you'll fall over because those organs have to have it. And so you need oxygen and carbon dioxide. Then this is also transporting things like the nutrients you absorb from your intestine, the waste that you're going to get rid of in your kidney. And so lots of organs depend on your cardiovascular system.
To go back to what you just said about not having enough oxygen and it'll knock you over in a minute. Yeah. There's a misconception. I know this is off topic. When people get put in the sleeper chokehold, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that some people pass out and then other people die from it? You know, in the movies they do one or the other. I don't understand that. Can you explain that?
Well, you have a couple blood vessels that are going to your brain,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then you also have in your neck you have your trachea. Okay,
Okay.
and so you can when you put compression on there,
Yeah.
um, you that compression, if it's just temporary, it might cause you to pass out and you can resume breathing. If it's permanent, it's going to kill you because
Yeah.
you're cutting off air and blood supply. And when they press on that, if they damage it in such a way that it doesn't reopen, you're going to die. Um,
Oh, okay. Okay.
um, so you can just compress it, or you could crush it, depending on how much force is there. Um, and depending on how fast they're using oxygen and things like that. So I can't say for sure, but often when someone's been strangled, it's often the structures are actually they weren't just temporarily closed, they were crushed, and so
Gotcha.
then didn't open. So and like often they're used, like when they're looking for victims of strangulation, there's a bone in here called the hyoid, and when that's crushed, that's a pretty good indication that they were strangled by someone like this. And
Gotcha.
and so and when that happens, that's probably, even if they release the grip, the person's probably going to die. So you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
um, and you have to, like I grew up watching wrestling, and on TV, like it, that was before WWF, and they'd show the sleeper hold and stuff like that. But those guys are partially acting, and
Yeah.
so unfortunately, my cousins and my neighbor kids, we didn't know that. We thought oh, you can do these things on people,
Oh, I
and
know. I'm good. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's not true. Okay, so anyway, so this system is really important for transporting things. It's also the system that we use to regulate body temperature. Your blood pH is how you regulate pH. Your fluid balance is through your blood. Your calcium balance, that's regulated through blood, and so there's a lot of regulatory things there. And then your immune system works there, blood clotting works there. So this is a really important system. Um, let's talk about the vessels before we talk about the heart. So I'm going to switch to the vessels. And I was listening to my program and I screwed up when I said something. So you have arteries, capillaries, and veins. So arteries and veins have three layers. They have an outer layer, a middle layer, and then an inner layer. And the big difference between arteries and capillaries is the middle layer. Arteries have lots of muscle and lots of elastic tissue in the middle layer. That allows arteries to stretch and contract. That controls the flow of blood. And it also, arteries are close to the heart, and that's where all the high pressure is. And so that's why they have this elastic and muscular layer. Veins are far away from the heart, so they don't need to stretch. The blood is moving slowly at low pressure. And so veins don't stretch, but they do have valves, because the valves make sure that the blood only goes towards the heart. And the importance of the valves is that if blood stops moving quickly, and starts to move backwards, the valves will seal off. And that's like in this left one here. And then if muscles press on the veins, they'll squirt the blood towards the heart. And this is called muscular pumping.
What would cause blood to flow the wrong direction?
If you're standing, for a long period of time, your blood will pool in your legs. Okay. And so jobs where people stand, day after day, year after year, that damages blood vessels in their legs. Or sitting jobs, standing or sitting causes blood to just pool in the legs.
So you're screwed either way.
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
want a job. You want a job where you can walk around, where you can get up and walk around once in a while, where you're not trapped.
oh,
Um, And so that's why, like military parades where they have to stand and not move a muscle, these guys pass out because the blood pools in their legs. Uh, or, or in jobs where you're sitting or standing for 8 hours and you can't move. People can do that, but over time, it's really hard on your blood vessels and your circulatory system.
So as long as you're moving and going, and every so often maybe sit down, you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's not bad to sit down. It's bad to be stuck sitting for 8 hours.
Gotcha.
That's bad.
I don't think I could do that anyways, but yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Well, you hear about these gamers, these guys that are playing these really involved games, and they sit in a chair for like 18 hours and they have strokes because of that, because the blood is just sitting in their legs and they can't flow. So even young people can have problems associated with not moving enough. And that's because the blood is trapped in these veins that are far away from your heart.
Now you just said young kids having this happen to them. Let's just say a kid has a very sedentary lifestyle coming up. How would that affect his adulthood and development? Would that mess with it?
Yeah, and when I say kid, I'm thinking of 18 years old. so we have to define kid.
I guess maybe be like 12 years old, 13 years old.
Yeah. So, well, let's just say where you develop a lifestyle where you're sitting all the time.
Yeah.
So that's likely to lead to poor circulation. So fluid will accumulate in their veins early, and this will happen most likely in their legs. They'll develop varicose veins. They'll have issues. It'll hurt. Their feet will hurt easily. They'll get a puffy kind of appearance. It'll be hard on their skin. So this will, it'll start in the legs, but it'll be their whole thing. And you'll see people who are older. And when I say older, I'm talking 40s, 50s, 60s. And they can really no longer be active at all because they're always have accumulated fluid in their limbs. And so they'll have real problems. And so these are people, many people in their 40s and 50s can't really take up an active lifestyle anymore because they've damaged these valves and the vessels in their legs. And so they've accumulated fluid. Their legs constantly feel heavy. Their skin is puffy. It's just hard. It's okay. So you have arteries and veins, and then in addition, you have gazillions and gazillions of very, very small blood vessels called capillaries. And capillaries don't have 3 layers. They really only have 1 layer of a wall that's only 1 cell thick, and that allows fluid to get out. And these are specialized for transport. So every tissue has capillaries nearby, thousands and thousands of them. All your muscle cells, all your brain cells, all your liver cells, they all have these very thin-walled capillaries very close to them so that they can exchange stuff. So
that sounds like a quiz. That sounds like a quiz question.
That does. It does. It does.
It really does.
Okay. So you have these networks of capillaries between your small arteries and your small veins. You have these networks of capillaries, and so that's bringing oxygen and carrying away carbon dioxide. It'll bring sugars to your tissues. It'll carry away waste products like acids and things like that. And so that's really, really important. And your whole body needs that. You have that. And you can, you don't have to have all of these running at the same time. You have this little thing here. This is a bypass. It allows sometimes for you to shut these capillaries off and just send blood back to the heart. And so you can reduce the amount of blood a muscle gets depending on how active it is. You can reduce the amount of blood that the kidney uses when you need blood somewhere else. Okay. But generally, there's lots and lots of capillaries, and blood pressure will fall dramatically. And so this is blood pressure in the arteries and veins. And so when the heart contracts, that's called systole. And so systolic pressure is pressure in the arteries when the heart is contracting, and that's when it's highest. Diastolic means the heart is relaxed. So there's this large blood vessels get this high pressure blood, and then it drops with each relaxation of the heart. So that's why they're stretchy and muscular. And then when blood goes through the capillaries, blood pressure drops. And in the veins, the blood pressure is very, very low. That's why you need valves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you on all these diagrams, I'm seeing red blended with blue. So red is coming out of the heart and blue is going back to the heart.
Right. And they're trying to show you there that in the lungs, blood picks up oxygen and then the heart pumps it to the rest of the body. And so
Oh,
that red blood, that is oxygen-rich blood. And so the arteries that go to the muscles have oxygen-rich blood. The arteries that go to the brain have oxygen-rich blood. And then in those capillaries, that's where the oxygen is given to the muscle cells or given to the brain cells. And the brain cells in return will give carbon dioxide to the blood. And so then the veins are going to carry most of that blood back to the heart, and then it'll send it to the lungs where it'll get rid of the carbon dioxide and pick up new oxygen. Okay, and so this is one of the really crucial functions that we depend on, and we depend on that in a minute-to-minute basis. You know,
yeah.
we can go 8-10 hours without eating food. We'll get hungry, but we're okay. I could maybe go a week without food.
No
Okay,
way.
but without oxygen, you're done in minutes because your cells all need that. Okay, so blood pressure is, we measure that in arteries, and it tells us about the ability to transport materials, how well our heart is working, and how hard our what kind of condition our arteries in. There's a bunch of factors that affect blood pressure. You know, how hard the heart is working, how much blood we have in the veins, how thick it is, and what kind of shape our arteries are in. This is sometimes called peripheral resistance. And we have this control center that's trying to maintain blood pressure at about 120/80. But for some people, even when they're at rest, they have high blood pressure. And this is called hypertension. Okay, and not many young people have this, but lots and lots of older adults. And by the time people are 70, it's like half of all older adults have hypertension. Okay, and this means that even at rest, these people have blood pressure significantly above what we think is healthy. And for some of them, we know it's related to their diet. We know it's related to age. We know it's related to obesity. And it doesn't really have any symptoms when you first get high blood pressure. Young adults often find out through a routine check that they have high blood pressure, but there's no symptoms till after you've had it 10 or 20 years.
Oh,
But after you've had it 10 or 20 years, it starts damaging organs. It damages your eyes, it damages your kidney, it starts damaging the heart. And it causes people to have an enlarged but somewhat flabby heart. And so this leads to what's called congestive heart failure. So the heart gets poorer and poorer at pumping. And so these people will accumulate fluid, often in their tissues or sometimes in their lungs. And so it's a major cause of problems. Hypertension after 20 years produces heart failure.
so what you're saying is that hypertension creates an individual to always have a very fast beating heart. So you're saying like just after a while, it's like running a machine at full capacity. It's going to wear it down, right?
Right,
That's
right.
what this much.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's too rapid. It can sometimes be just too strong.
Oh,
But the pressure is just too high on a regular basis. For many people, if they restrict the amount of salt in their diet, they'll be okay. But not everybody. Some people have, they're insensitive to salt. They'll have hypertension all the time. And so this damages blood vessels. It ruins the kidney, causes the kidney to become leaky, causes people to have to go on dialysis. So it's an important cause of blindness. It's an important cause of stroke as well. So it's a really severe problem. But it has no symptoms. For years and years and years, people have this with no symptoms.
So
So
what's the preventative measures that a person can take for this?
getting your blood pressure checked regularly when you're an adult. And that doesn't mean every month, but every year or two, you should have your blood pressure checked.
Yeah.
If it takes them a year to figure out if you've got hypertension when you're 30, that's okay. Okay, that'll be all right. They'll get it under control. The type of damage we're worried about is damage after 10 or 20 years of hypertension. My mom had hypertension. That was a major problem, and she had it probably for 25 years before she died of heart failure. She died of heart failure, and the symptom was she was accumulating fluid. Her heart could no longer pump fast enough to keep the fluid circulating. And so that led to weakness, accumulating fluid in her legs and her tissues, and then heart failure. So that was recently. That was only last year when that happened.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was hard, but we knew that was a risk. She had hypertension for a long time, and it was hers was poorly controlled, and so that hers wasn't really a salt sensitive one. I think it was more stress. She had to take care of my dad, which was really the problem. So, and that's stress related. So that's your hormone levels can affect your regulatory system, and so that was stress related.
Really? So how does a drug suppress the side effects of hypertension then?
Well, a drug can affect how you regulate it. So let me go back here. So there's this little thing with you can see the brain there in the spinal cord.
Yeah.
Okay, and it says Vasomotor Center in the medulla oblongata. So one way you regulate blood pressure is by regulating how open or closed the blood vessels are. Remember the muscle that was in the arteries? If you cause that muscle to relax, the artery opens and blood pressure drops. So you can give medications that will promote that. They're called vasodilators. The kidney also produces a hormone, I should say the adrenal gland and the kidney interact in a little thing to change blood volume. And so you can give people a hormone that reduces blood pressure by changing blood volume. The side effects of that are that they're kind of negative in that for men it makes it hard for them to have sex because they'll have a hard time maintaining an erection. And that's that's the other bad thing about what is it, Viagra. For guys my age, they think, oh, Viagra, yeah, I'll take Viagra. Well, Viagra, it helps you function sexually, but it can raise your blood pressure and monkey with your blood pressure. But they die happy. That's the thing. Of course, now maybe their wives are thinking, don't give him the Viagra. but who knows? So luckily I can joke about it because I don't have to deal with that. All right. So that was my main deal for today was to explain hypertension. I'm sure this is probably not a problem for you, but this is a really important thing for people your parents' age and your grandparents' age.
I didn't know anything about this. I don't think they taught us this in my biology class in high school.
Right. And so for older adults like my age, it's really important to get your blood pressure checked. I'm not in that age where people are having lots of cardiovascular problems yet, but I'm at the age where hypertension gets going. And so it's important for me to regularly have my blood pressure checked because I could do some of that damage to my kidney, or I could wind up with blindness, or I could wind up with a heart problem if I didn't go see the doctor every year or every other year to make sure my blood pressure is under control and normal. I'm at an age where didn't go to the doctor for 10 years and suddenly I have very high very high blood pressure. I have hypertension that's severe, and I've already got damage to my kidney. And so that's, it's really important, even, even for people that don't have insurance. If you're older, getting checked now can prevent really, really big complications. And once you have kidney damage, boy, dialysis, there's nothing worse than dialysis. It's a couple times every week for hours hooked up to a machine, and it's
That would
expensive.
suck. Yeah, that would suck.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is a long chapter, hard stuff. Hypertension is really important. Next week, I'm going to talk a little bit about heart structure and function and heart disease. Okay. And so that's next time. And I'll say something about stroke, because those are really kind of the same. Heart disease and stroke are very closely related. It's blocked arteries either in the brain or in the heart, no oxygen, and either way you're in trouble. So we'll talk about that.
Sounds good. I will get that homework and quiz done for this week.
Okay.
And I will see you next week then.
All right. Sounds good.
Have a good weekend.
You too. See you later.